In every war, there are battles history forgot and machines that changed it forever. From the burning skies of the Pacific to the steel tides of the Atlantic, we uncover the moments where courage met technology and legends were born in fire. This is Bloodstained Chronicles, where war's forgotten echoes come back to life. December 27th, 1942. The tropical sun rises over Port Moresby, casting long shadows across the battered airstrip. The war in New Guinea has been a brutal stalemate. Men fight not only the enemy, but the jungle, the heat, and the endless swarms of disease. And then, they see it. Lined beneath torn camouflage netting stand a row of strange new machines, twin-boomed, twin-engined fighters, their metal skin gleaming silver beneath the humid sky. Nothing like the single-engine warbirds the crews were used to. To some, they look like mechanical dragons. To others, a mistake. These are Lockheed P-38 Lightnings, fresh from the United States. Born from radical engineering, they're unlike anything the Pacific has seen. 2 engines, 2 tails, one pilot sitting between them like the arrowhead of a spear. The ground crews whisper doubts. Too heavy, they say. Too complicated. But the pilots see something else, potential. A machine fast enough to chase the enemy, strong enough to bring its pilot home, and built to endure what the Pacific skies demand. As dawn breaks, the airfield stirs to life. Engines cough, roar, and finally settle into the deep, confident hum of twin Allisons. The smell of fuel mixes with the scent of wet jungle earth. From the control tower, the order comes through, scramble. Bogies inbound. The pilots climb in, Major Richard Bong, Lieutenant Ken Sparks, and others whose names would soon become legend. Propellers spin, throttles forward. The ground shudders as the first lightnings rise into the sky. Up above, sunlight glints off wings that seem to split the clouds themselves. The men inside are flying history's experiment, and they know it. Minutes later, their radios crackle. Bandits 12 o'clock high. Below them, a formation of Japanese bombers drifts across the sea. Flanked by agile Zeros, the Lightnings tilt their wings, sunlight flashing like blades, and dive. The battle that begins over New Guinea will silence every skeptic. The P-38s slash through the enemy formation with terrifying precision, cannons firing from the nose, no need to align wings. One bomber erupts in flame, then another. The Zeros twist and roll to fight back, but the Lightnings are faster, climbing higher, diving harder, striking from impossible angles. By the time the sky clears, the Japanese are in retreat. When the Lightnings return, bullet holes scar their wings, oil leaks trail behind. But they're alive. Every pilot, every machine down on the field, dust swirls as they land. Mechanics rush forward. The base commander stares at the sky and mutters, "What in God's name have they built?" And somewhere across the sea, a Japanese pilot reports a sight he can barely describe, a twin-tailed demon that came out of the sun. The legend of the fork-tailed devil has begun. In the months that followed that first clash over New Guinea, the strange twin-tailed fighter began to earn a name, whispered with awe and fear. To the Americans, it was the Lightning. To the Japanese, it became something else, Nino o Oni, the two-tailed devil. For the enemy pilots, it seemed to appear from nowhere, flashing silver in the tropical sun, diving from impossible heights, its guns firing before they could even react. For the men who flew it, the P-38 was both a gift and a burden, powerful, fast, but unforgiving. The Pacific was unlike any battlefield before. The air was thick with humidity. Engines overheated. Men battled malaria, exhaustion, and isolation as much as they fought the Japanese. From primitive jungle airstrips, surrounded by swamps and mosquitoes, they launched into the unknown each day, trusting only their aircraft and each other. The Lightning's twin engines gave them hope. If one failed, the other would bring them home, a lifeline no single-engine pilot could rely on. Its long range meant they could strike deeper, escort bombers farther, chase the fight beyond the edge of the map. But with innovation came danger. The Lightning's controls were heavy, Its engines demanded precision. One mistake at high altitude, one dive too steep, and the airframe could lock up, sending the plane into a death spiral. More than one young pilot met the jungle that way. The twisted wreckage later swallowed by vines and silence. Yet, for every pilot lost, more came forward, drawn to the challenge and the legend. Each saw what the P-38 could do, its speed, its climb, its twin 20mm cannons that fired from the nose with terrifying accuracy. In a dogfight where seconds meant survival, that design was everything. The Japanese, once masters of maneuver, found themselves outmatched. Their Zeros could turn tighter, but they couldn't climb faster or dive harder. Every encounter ended the same. The Lightning struck first, struck fast, and disappeared before they could strike back. Soon, Allied intelligence began hearing new radio chatter. Pilots describing the silver ghosts, aircraft that came from nowhere and left only smoke and flame. The nickname spread through Japanese squadrons like superstition, the fork-tailed devil. For the men of the 39th Fighter Squadron, that name was a badge of honor. They painted the tails of their planes with shark teeth, lightning bolts, and pin-up girls. They lived on canned food, quinine tablets, and letters from home. But when the call came to scramble, every man ran for his Lightning like it was his lifeline. Day after day, sortie after sortie, they pushed the enemy back. Each victory came at a cost: sweat, fatigue, loss. But in the smoke-filled skies of New Guinea, the balance of power was shifting. The era of the nimble Zero was ending. The age of the Lightning, the twin-engine terror of the Pacific, had begun. By 1943, the war in the air had climbed higher. Literally. Fights that once raged low over jungle and sea now reached the thin, frozen edges of the sky. Here, above 25,000 feet, the P-38 Lightning came into its own. At that altitude, the air was razor-thin. Engines gasped for breath. Guns froze. Even the pilots' fingers stiffened inside their gloves as frost crept along the cockpit glass. Yet the Lightnings thrived where others faltered, their twin turbochargers howling as they clawed upward through the clouds. Up here, it wasn't just combat. It was survival. Each breath came through an oxygen mask that smelled of rubber and fear. The horizon blurred into the endless white below, and a pilot could forget where sky ended and earth began. Lose focus for one moment, and the Lightning's nose would dip into a spiral from which few returned. Major Richard Bong once wrote, "You feel alone up there, even when surrounded by friends." The radio goes quiet, the sky is too big, and you realize the war isn't down below, it's inside you. Still, they flew. Every mission began the same: briefings at dawn, black coffee, engines roaring in the mist. Then formation takeoff, silver arrows rising into a burning sky. The Japanese would be waiting, Zeros, Oscars, Kai-61 Tonys, sleek, agile, and still deadly in the right hands. But at high altitude, agility meant less than power, and the Lightning had plenty of it. Combat up here was over in seconds. A flash of sunlight on metal, a call over the radio, and suddenly the sky erupted. Cannon shells tore through wings. Tracers danced between vapor trails. Pilots fought not only their enemies, but the pull of gravity, the screaming dive that threatened to rip their wings apart. And through it all, the Lightning held, its frame groaning, its pilot praying. One after another, victories were tallied. Some came easy, others cost dearly. When a man didn't return, his bunk stayed empty, his name added to the board with quiet chalk. No speeches, no ceremony, just a moment of silence before the next sortie. The enemy learned to respect the twin tails that shimmered in the sun. The Lightning could dive faster than any Zero, climb out of reach, and strike again from above. Soon, Japanese squadrons began avoiding combat when the devils appeared. Yet for the pilots, triumph felt hollow. Each success was a reminder of how fragile they were, a heartbeat between glory and oblivion. At night, they sat in tents lit by kerosene lamps, listening to the jungle's hum, staring at the photo of someone waiting far away. Up there, above the clouds, it was easy to believe they were untouchable. Down here in the mud and rain they were just men, young, tired and haunted. Still, when the siren wailed again, they rose without hesitation, because for everyone who fell, another took to the sky. And in those lonely heavens, the lightning continued to roar, a symbol of power, courage, and sacrifice. By early 1943, the Pacific War had changed, and much of it was because of one machine. The P-38 Lightning had become more than a fighter. It was a symbol of momentum. From the steaming jungles of New Guinea to the coral seas beyond, Allied air power was no longer retreating. It was advancing. Each new airstrip carved into the wilderness brought the front line closer to Japan's empire. And above it all, the twin tails of the Lightning sliced through the clouds, escorting bombers, hunting transports, and sweeping the skies clear of opposition. Its long range made it the perfect spearhead, capable of striking targets others could barely reach. The Japanese pilots, once masters of the sky, now fought a desperate, defensive war. Their Zeros, unmatched in 1941, were being outclassed by the raw speed and endurance of American designs. And leading them was the Lightning, fast enough to run, strong enough to fight, and versatile enough to do both. In mess tents across New Guinea, pilots began hearing whispers of a mission so bold it bordered on impossible. Intelligence from broken Japanese codes revealed a plan, a flight by Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor himself. If they could intercept him, they could strike at the very heart of Japan's command. The operation's name would become legend. Operation Vengeance, April 18, 1943. 18 P-38s took off from Guadalcanal, flying at wave-top height for over 400 miles, beneath enemy radar, over endless ocean, their engines barely above stall speed. Each man knew this was a one-way trip if anything went wrong. There were no alternative airfields, no rescue if they ditched, only the mission. Hours later, they spotted a formation of Betty bombers over Bougainville Island, among them Yamamoto. The Lightnings climbed, throttles forward, rising like ghosts from the sea. In the next few moments, history changed course. Major Thomas Lanphier and his squadron dived from the sun. Cannon fire tore through the sky. One bomber exploded instantly. Another spiraled into the jungle below. Yamamoto's plane vanished into the trees. The architect of Pearl Harbor was dead. The message reached Tokyo by nightfall. For the first time, Japan's military bowed its head in shock. For the first time, the Americans felt the tide of the Pacific truly turning. From that day onward, the Lightning wasn't just a weapon. It was a legend. It had crossed distances thought impossible, struck with surgical precision, and changed the course of the war in a single mission. As the months passed, P-38s escorted bombers deep into enemy territory, protected convoys, and dominated air battles from Rabaul to the Philippines. They became the eyes, claws, and shield of the Allied advance. Every pilot who climbed into that glass cockpit carried not only his life, but the weight of the war itself. And in the skies of the Pacific, wherever the silver twin tails appeared, victory wasn't far behind. As the Pacific War raged toward its end, one shape had come to define the sky, the twin-tailed silhouette of the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. From the steaming jungles of New Guinea to the volcanic peaks of the Philippines, its presence meant dominance. It had outclimbed the Zero, outrun the Oscar, and outlasted them all. By 1944, the Lightning had become the long arm of the Allied advance, flying missions so far that even bombers depended on its escort. It guarded the great B-24s over Rabaul, swept ahead of the island-hopping fleets, and stalked enemy shipping far beyond the horizon. Wherever the Pacific was darkest, its twin engines brought the light, and from its cockpit rose the names of legends. Richard Bong, America's highest-scoring ace, 40 aerial victories all in a Lightning. Thomas Maguire, fearless and relentless, who would give his life in one final dogfight. Charles Lindbergh, the peacetime hero turned combat advisor, who taught pilots how to stretch the aircraft's range beyond what anyone thought possible. Each man left his mark on the legend, a mixture of courage, innovation, and sacrifice, but behind the heroism were men still barely older than boys. They lived among the mud and mosquitoes, scribbling letters to sweethearts, praying engines would hold another day. Every takeoff was a coin toss with fate, every landing a small miracle. And when they returned from the sky, blackened with oil and sweat, they knew tomorrow would ask the same of them again. The lightning was more than metal. It was a promise that in a war stretching across half the planet, technology and determination could overcome even the fiercest odds. It carried reconnaissance cameras that mapped the Pacific, destroyed bombers that once ruled the skies, and hunted targets deep inside enemy territory. It was the weapon of reach, of patience, of inevitability. When peace finally came, many lightnings were scrapped, left to rust in jungle clearings or sink into coral lagoons. But others found new life, as air races, as test aircraft, as monuments to an age when courage and invention met in the thin air above a world at war. Today, the few that remain gleam under museum lights or rise into the sky at air shows, their twin tails still catching the sunlight like blades. And somewhere, in the mountains of New Guinea, the jungle still hides the remnants of the first ones that flew. Their aluminum frames lie silent beneath vines and moss, resting where their pilots once fought for life, freedom, and the belief that the impossible could be done. The lightning changed the Pacific, and with it the future of aerial warfare. It proved that range could win battles, that speed could save nations, and that courage could carry a man beyond the limits of his time. So when you hear the deep, twin-engine roar echo through old film reels or museum hangars, remember what it meant: a machine born of imagination, forged in fire, and carried forever in the thunder of its name. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The echoes fade, but the stories remain. From shattered skies to silent seas, every legend leaves a mark, written in steel, fire, and sacrifice. You've been watching Bloodstained Chronicles. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the forgotten battles that shaped our world.